Hi, this is Peter Godinez, your host for Your Pivot Journey. And again, the pivot journey has a lot to do with pivots in relationships, pivots in career, but most important, pivots in our health. And I have a very special guest who I had the opportunity to train with while we were both All-American athletes at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And here we are in the year 2022, and we're talking about a wonderful program called Flow for Health, which he has designed. And I want to talk about this. So I want to introduce my special guest and brother, Rick Brunner.
Thanks, Pete. Good to be with you.
Yeah, so, we have lots to talk about here, Rick, and we're going to try to do this within 25 minutes. But can you give us just a little bit of history of who you are, what you've experienced, and why you actually are developing and promoting this Flow for Health program?
Well, after grad school at Cal Poly, I got involved in the retail side of things and managed a store. Eventually, in a couple of years, managed a store the size of a Target, but that division of Lucky Stores was sold off. So I kind of floundered around for a year, and then one of my very best friend Mike was starting a nutrition company, a sport nutrition company. So I got involved a little bit and was curious about it, and it just took hold. I was fascinated by everything, the science and everything, and so they were doing some products, and one of them was based on some Soviet research, and I had it translated, and I loved it. And I wound up going to the Soviet Union for the first time in 1988. I went with the National Strength and Conditioning Association group, a very elite strength and conditioning coaches, and we went to Bulgaria and Russia, and I was the only nutrition guy there, and out of the group. So the Soviet scientists that I met were fascinated by that. And I was invited to some roundtables and whatnot. And the short of it is I made some really good connections and friends. And these scientists were the best of the best in the Soviet Union. Exercise physiologists, nutritionists. They were working with the elite international group of athletes. And I was privy to all of that. And I went several times to Russia over about a series of about 6 years. Got invited back a number of times, got a couple awards by the Soviet Union too for my work. And that really kind of cemented my career. I really wanted to do a lot of good things in athletic performance. So when I came back, I developed a number of products, worked a lot with some the very best strength and conditioning coaches in the United States, in the NFL, Major League Baseball, Olympic coaches. And then of course, thousands of athletes as well that I changed. I wrote for magazines as well for a number of years. So that kind of started me on the journey. And then kind of a short, fast pace to now is that I'm getting older, and I was thinking, I need to focus a little bit more on an older crowd because I was seeing everybody just out of shape, flabby. My target market for this Flow for Health is people 45 and over, because that's kind of when the body starts to change drastically, especially for women. They go into perimenopause and then menopause. And it's literally a market of about 130 million Americans, and they're not in good health. It's very serious. A recent study that I found from 2020 was done by some scientists at Johns Hopkins University and the National Institute on Aging, trended all of the what's called central obesity, which is basically belly fat. Okay, and what they found was by 2030, which is just 8 years from now, 55.6% of men and 80% of women in America are going to be centrally obese. And I see it day in and day out. I help a friend with his local health food store here. I'm in there quite a bit. And I see people coming in and they are not in good health. And they're looking for the magic bullet, the magic pill, something to ease their pain, something to lose drop their weight or whatever. And it's just not efficient, and it's not working. And so I wanted to create something more dynamic and more complete. And that's why I created Flow for Health.
Thank you so much for that explanation. And when we talk about target, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking 55 plus all the way, whatever age somebody goes. And in my opinion, Rick, anybody who's motivated and listening to this program wants to look good. Anybody agree? They want to feel good. And they just want to live a long life where they're not drooling and not, there's no energy. And so, I understand the Flow for Health as a 4-part system, correct? I got the numbers right on those
Right.
portion of
Yep.
it.
Uh-huh.
And can you kind of just briefly, since we're limited time, just go over each 4 of those particular elements?
Sure. The 4 key components of the program are what you eat and drink. I don't use the word diet because it's it's really what you eat and drink, what you put down the pie hole. Okay. So what you eat and drink, exercise, and mostly we target resistance exercise and high intensity interval exercise. Okay. And the third component of it is intermediate fasting, and that's eating in a smaller window of the day. And then the third component is very specialized, very targeted, efficient dietary supplements. I've created 2 initial ones. One is for fat burning, and one is for is a booster that's used with protein powder for muscle building.
No, that's excellent description of the 4 elements. And so many of the people I consider a life change in pivoting your health. It's like you get addicted to certain lifestyles, foods. And I can only speak for myself, Rick. I know we're about the same age, under 21. I'm just kidding. But, it's like for me, I grew up when McDonald's only had $100,000 burgers sold. I grew up around Dolly Madison, Twinkies, the Helms bakery trucks. Oh my gosh, the high amounts of fats and sugars of all these sweet pastries. And oh my gosh, Taco Bell all of a sudden became a part. So I'm a part of a culture that is actually addicted to a certain lifestyle. And it's just kind of like that, I think, is the challenge. Now, everybody's listening probably did not have the same thing. They probably didn't have that. But I think Health Pivot has to dealing with, let's call it addictions patterns. And so the concept of, let's say, for instance, intermittent fasting, we grew up with the 3 square meals with the snacks, the midnight snacks and all that. So it's really a cultural change that you're trying to encourage, your target of, let's say, 55 plus in doing. So what would you say in answering that particular statement? What makes you so different from everybody else who says, yes, I will make you feel good, I will make you look good, and this is how you're going to do it? And that's the message we really want to hone in on, Rick, and get whoever's listening to this content an idea why Rick Brunner with Flow for Health is so different.
Well, I think, you get back to the people that are the audience or the potential customers for this brand, this program, and it's 45 and over. So my market is probably 45 to, let's say, 80. The interesting thing, though, is that as people age and they get into their 80s, they have their kids. Their kids are now older too, and so the question is, this is a real crisis. Who's going to take care of who? Because we've all grown up with, like what you said, Pete, the junk food and the A&W root beer. I mean, we used to remember those frosty big mugs of A&W root beer.
I have one right here, Rick. No, just kidding. So anyway,
they must have 200 grams of sugar in each one of those, and we pounded them like no tomorrow. But we were athletes, we were training. I use the analogy of a free-flowing river versus a stagnant pond. And that's where I came up with the name Flow for this program, because when we're young, we're in flow. We're like a free-flowing river. The river's clean, it's full of plant life and bugs and fish and teeming with life. And as it goes downstream, something happens and it becomes a stagnant pond. And as we get older, we literally become a stagnant pond. We need to get it moving again. And those 4 components are what are essential to get it moving. And that's really the weakness of of certain industries right now is they dabble in their own little silo, like the supplement industry is making supplements, make gobs of them. Okay. But then people don't use them properly, or they don't get the right supplement or whatever. So they don't get a good result. And then there's the people that are in the diet part, eat this and eat that. But then the supplement's not married to that. So there's no synergy. There's no cohesiveness to that. So that's really my task, is to develop a program that's going to work for everybody. But then you mentioned it about the people themselves. There's a psychology of this thing too. I've spent many years, over 30 years, interacting with individuals. Now, early on, it was mostly athletes, but some older people. Now it's pretty much strictly older people in that 45 and beyond group. That's what I'm fascinated by. And, you have to wonder, well, can you motivate them? Here's the deal. You don't motivate anybody. They have to motivate themselves. Okay. They have to make the decision down the line that ultimately they say to themselves, I've had it. I want to change. I call it disgust. They're disgusted by their lifestyle or how they look or how they feel. People have aches and pains. Sometimes it's very common for people to have aches and pains in different parts of the body even. I have no aches and pains. Okay. I do this program myself. Okay. I dropped 30 pounds of body fat when I first started it. And I gained muscle and strength. So I'm a living example that this thing works. And I knew it worked before I even committed to it. Okay. Now, it's easy to do. It really is. It's simple. It's easy. So if you're disgusted by your lifestyle, then what you need to do is learn what we teach you. And then you need to develop your own plan. And then you need to get busy and do it. Okay. You need to bring in action, aggressive action, and get it done. And you will see a change within 60 days. You will see a dramatic change within 60 days of your life. I'm confident of it. I've worked with enough people with this program to see it happen. It's like flipping a switch. Is it simple in that way? No, it takes work. But you have to pay the price. The price is either, like you said, Pete, drooling, living in an assisted living place, or out doing what you love to do, hiking, fishing, playing with the grandkids, whatever it is. That's what we want to get people back to, is doing the stuff they love to do.
And, I want to build on, I just think that flowing river, Rick, just sells a story. And I think in one segment, we showed a clean river with fresh water moving real fast. And then all of a sudden kind of the after shot was like a sewage, brown, slow moving. And, again, for myself, everybody who's listening has various motivations as to why they'd want to do something like that. I mentioned a few: looking good, feeling good. But for myself, and I hope I don't offend anybody watching it, but one of my goals is, you meet so many people who are starting to get older, and they need to be taken care of. They need their diapers changed. They need moved around. And then really they're an inconvenience to the people who love them the most. And I think, I'm motivated to make sure I'm going to do everything I can to be supporting people versus people trying to take care of me. So again, we talk about the motivation, Rick. Do you want to be an 80-year-old who people are taking care of, or an 80-year-old who basically is helping out, moving around, fun to be with? I think that would just be motivation, unto itself. So again, back to, the various things like, not everybody watching is as a former athlete or like an all-American hammer thrower like you are. And, so you don't have to be a former athlete to appreciate what you're doing. And even with the exercise, I saw you push around a lot of heavy weights when we were training, but now it's changed. It's a higher volume. So is that something let's talk about the exercise portion of it, because there are lots of fitness organizations are charging lots of money to show up, and their goal actually is they hope you don't show up. You drop the money down and they hope you don't show.
Right.
Sorry to kind of break the truth on this stuff, but can you talk a little bit about the exercise portion of it?
Sure. It's a really important part. In fact, even though I'm a supplement researcher and I develop supplements, I've developed for many companies in the industry. and they're wonderful. And I've created a couple really good ones to start with in this program. I will freely admit that exercise is the equalizer. It is something that's absolutely essential for anybody. You got to move, that you've got to create the flow, and you're going to create the flow through the exercise protocols. And we're going to help you do that because we're going to give you the exercise. I've partnered with a colleague of mine that works with a very elite athlete, and he's actually in his the athlete's in his 60s now, but he's just really good with knowledge of how to get the efficiency of the exercises. A lot of people train incorrectly, Pete. I mean, I go to the gym 5 days a week sometimes, or five days a week, sometimes maybe four days a week. But I notice people training incorrectly, not so that it's wrong or they're going to hurt themselves, although sometimes they do, but it's inefficient. So we've created a program with exercises that are efficient, that are effective, and you're not going to injure yourself. You know, you mentioned the throwing the heavy weights and stuff. When we're young, we can do that. I found that higher repetition work, as far as the resistance exercise, is perfectly appropriate. Okay, you're going to get the muscle growth that you want in conjunction with the supplements, and you're not going to hurt yourself, and you're going to be able to build, week after week, month after month.
No, it's a beautiful thing. And again, onto the other element that I think in a lot of ways has probably more emotion and a need for change is called the intermittent fasting, because we're so used to having several meals. And again, maybe it's where I'm coming from. It's like, that's probably, it's first of all, it's eating the right things, right? But now going as long as you possibly can, without actually taking anything in, that might pose a problem, but it's really a key element of the four-pronged system that you're talking about. What advice, encouragement, or reality would you say is for people going, what do you mean I can't eat for 16 hours? What would you say to that, Rick?
Yeah, it's also another extremely important part of this 4-phase program. There's no one phase that, I mean, the exercise is important, and the diet is obviously important. The intermittent fasting is important. I'll explain that in the supplement. So it's just a synergistic, complete program. The intermittent fasting is very important because when you eat in a smaller window of the day, you produce less insulin. Now, every time you eat a meal and something goes down the pie hole, there's a spike of insulin. What is insulin for? Insulin's designed to send a signal to the cells to bring in blood sugar. Okay, it comes from the pancreas, and out it goes. Now, a lot of people today are hyperinsulinemic. In fact, probably 140 million Americans are producing too much insulin already. Okay, that's not just because of they're eating all day, but that's part of it. Because every time you eat, you increase and you have an insulin spike. Insulin is a great anabolic hormone. It's important for muscle building, but it's also the best thing to put on belly fat. And the problem right now is that belly fat. I mentioned that percentage of, 80% of women and 55.6% of men by 2030 being centrally obese. That's belly fat. Okay. So if you take a tape measure around your waist right now and you're a guy, and you're in that 39, 40 inch waist or above, you're centrally obese. Okay. And even older people can be centrally obese. They can just be what I call a skinny fat person. Okay. They've lost all their muscle mass. The program is designed to build muscle and burn that belly fat is really what it comes down to. And it's kind of a vicious cycle. As that belly fat increases, the ability to build muscle decreases. And as the ability to build muscle decreases, the ability to put on more fat increases. So it's just a circle, and it gets out of control. And as you get older, you wind up having a higher percentage of body fat and a lower percentage of muscle mass. And that's not what you want when you get older. What you want when you get older is actually to build muscle and lose that body fat, because that central obesity that a lot of this insulin, insulin is producing too, in the belly, is very special kind of fat. Okay, these fat cells, when they get full of fatty acids, full of triglycerides, send out a stress signal, and they produce huge amounts of inflammation. And that inflammation goes throughout the entire body. So you may have, a sore shoulder or something in your hands. Your hands are painful or something like that, or your joints ache or whatever. And you may relate that to that joint, but it's probably coming from your belly. Okay, because that's where it all starts. So intermittent fasting shrinks that window, so you have less spikes of insulin. That's one of the most important parts of it. And also, when you shrink the window of when you eat, let's say you eat in say a 6 to 8 hour window of the day, you increase in the fasting stage of that, between when you eat, you increase certain proteins that signal the ability of the body to burn fat, the ability of the body to clean out the cells. It's called autophagy. Mitochondria, where fat is burned, is improved. And then also these proteins also increase the ability to build muscle. So the whole thing is a giant win-win. So intermittent fasting is really, really important to introduce.
Yes, and we're running out of time here, but let's just talk about how do people actually find out more information. I think you have a website. I'm going to just say it's Flow for Health with the number 4 in the middle of it.com. So
yeah, it's for flowforhealth.us right now. We don't have it up yet, but it will be. That's one of the things we're going to be working on, is to do we have a really good web development group here in Bozeman, Montana, that's going to develop this, and I want it to be first class. So we're going to take the time to make sure that it's looking really good. There'll be a lot of education. I mean, I'm big on education. People need to know what to do, and it needs to be simple. The education needs to be simple. It needs to be explained simply. It's based on a lot of really solid science. And the nice thing about science now is it's just exploded in the science. Nobody's talking about any of this stuff, and about some of the proteins that are produced in the fat cells and in the muscle cells, and how they interact, and how we're going to able to build more muscle and burn that body fat. That'll be all on the website.
No, it's wonderful. And I think what people are actually investing in when they say yes to Flow for Health is not only just the 4 elements, Rick, that we talk about, but the encouragement, the guidance, that, hey, I'm working out, Rick, and I'm feeling rather sore. What can you help me do? Or somebody might say, Rick, I'm feeling like I'm starving to death. Can you help me with the intermittent fasting? And hey, you know what, Rick, I'm swallowing every vitamin in the world. You work for a vitamin store. I know, Rick, help me that. So, I think when people invest in the Flow for Health, they're actually going to get Rick Brunner. And, whether it's one-on-one or through a blog or through articles or videos that you're going to be producing, they're going to watch those things, because, you can't do this alone. You can't. And I think Rick is somebody who is available. He wants to help. And especially, I think, at this stage of our life. And I always call it, Rick, the third trimester of what we have left. And so to do the math on that. So with Rick, thanks for doing this interview. I'm sure we'll do another one. But with that, I'm just going to sign off. And this is Rick Brunner, who is a coach and applied scientist. I'm sorry if I didn't say that at the beginning. And I'm Peter Godinez from Your Pivot Journey, your host. So goodbye.